We often think about dinosaurs, these huge creatures from, well, ages ago, but each one really has its own story, a journey, discovery, debate, finding its place.
Exactly. And today we're digging into one with a particularly, let's say, historically resonant name, Bonapartesaurus.
Yeah, that Bonaparte
Yeah.
definitely catches your attention. Is it that Bonaparte?
Well, we'll get to that. It's actually a really interesting backstory. This deep dive, we're going to follow the science, trace its discovery in Argentina, sort of navigate the twists in how it was classified.
And figure out what it tells us about dinosaur life in South America, way back in the late Cretaceous.
Precisely. We're drawing on the paleontological studies, the papers, detailing the digs, the indices, all that good stuff.
Okay, so our mission today, really get under the hood of Bonapartesaurus, follow its scientific journey, see what the fossils tell us.
Let's do it. This story really kicks off in 1984. An Argentine paleontologist, Jaime Powell, and his team found some fossils. This was in Rio Negro province, Argentina.
Right, the Allen Formation, I know that area pops up a lot. Salitral Moreno site, specifically.
That's the one. A really productive spot for late Cretaceous fossils. So Powell finds these bones, and by 1987, he publishes some initial thoughts.
And what was his first take?
He suggested it might be an indeterminate lambeosaurine.
Okay, Lambeosaurine. That's one of the duck-billed dinosaurs, the Hadrosaurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ones with the big, fancy, often hollow crests.
Exactly. He was looking at things like Hypocrosaurus, maybe Barsboldia. And a key thing he noted were these really large neural spines on the vertebrae.
Those bony bits sticking up from the backbone, like you can feel on your own spine.
Yeah, precisely. Their size made him think along those lambeosaurine lines, but it was just an initial idea, indeterminate.
So a first clue, but not a definite ID. What happened next? Did others pick up on this?
Well, years passed. Then in 2010, a different team, led by Ruben D. Juarez Valieri, looked at some of Powell's material, plus other fossils found nearby, including some from a place called Islas Malvinas within the same formation.
Okay, so expanding the data set a bit.
Right. And based on this collection, they proposed a whole new genus and species, Willinacoxylitralensis.
Willinacock. Okay, a new name entered the picture. And Powell's earlier finds.
Some of the material he'd examined actually became the paratype for Willinacock.
Oh, the paratype. So like a secondary reference specimen alongside the main one, the holotype.
Exactly. So Powell's work was definitely foundational, even if it led to Willinacock initially.
But science moves on, right?
Yeah.
Was Willinacock the final word? Sounds like maybe not, given the name we started with.
You guessed it. Fast forward to 2016. Penelope Cruz Caballero and Rodolfo Coria took another look, a critical review.
Enjoy.
What did they find? They basically questioned if Willinacock was, well, a valid genus. They pointed out the fossils were pretty incomplete, not perfectly preserved.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and they even suggested the material might actually represent more than one type of hadrosaur mixed together. They felt the features used to define Willinacock weren't strong enough, weren't distinct enough.
So, a bit shaky.
Very. Their conclusion was to classify it as an indeterminate saurolophine. That's another hadrosaur subfamily, usually the ones without the big hollow crests. And they declared Willinacoxylitralensis a nomen vanum.
A nomen vanum. That sounds not good. Like a vain name?
Essentially, yes. A name without a solid diagnosable foundation based on the available evidence. So Willinacock was basically sidelined.
Wow. Okay, so the fossils are still there, but the name Willinacock is kind of invalid now. What happens to those bones Powell found?
Well, this is where things circle back. In 2017, Cruz Caballero teamed up with Jaime Powell himself. Sadly, the study was published after Powell passed away.
Oh, wow. So his final contribution, in a way.
It seems so. They specifically re-examined that original paratype material from Willinacock, the bones from the Salitral Moreno site.
And they decided it was something just after all.
Exactly. They concluded this material did represent a unique genus and species, and this is where Bonapartesaurus rhanagrensis finally gets its name.
Bonapartesaurus. Okay, so here it is. And the Bonaparte connection.
Not Napoleon. It honors José Bonaparte.
The José Bonaparte.
Yeah.
The giant of Argentine paleontology.
That's the one. A fitting tribute, really. He did so much for our understanding of South American dinosaurs, and rhanagrensis just refers to the Rio Negro province where it was found.
That makes perfect sense. A paleontological titan, not an emperor. So Bonapartesaurus is classified as what exactly?
It's a herbivorous ornithopod dinosaur. Definitely within the Hadrosauridae family, the duckbills. Specifically, they placed it in the Saurophinae subfamily.
Okay, so one of the non-crested or solid-crested ones, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And living when?
Late Cretaceous. The Campanian and Maastrichtian stages right at the end of the dinosaur era, found in that Allen Formation.
Got it. So let's try and picture this animal. What bones do we actually have for the holotype? The main specimen, MPCA PVSM 2171.
It's a pretty decent haul, though not a full skeleton. We've got 4 back vertebrae, a complete sacrum that fused hip section of the spine and tail vertebrae from different parts of the tail.
Okay, the backbone.
18 hemal arches, too, those chevron-shaped bones under the tail vertebrae. Some ribs, bits of the shoulder, a scapula fragment, a humerus fragment, an ulna from the forearm.
Right. Limbs? Pelvis?
Yep. A nearly complete ilium and pubis, the main hip bones and fragments of the ischium, the back part of the pelvis. Both femurs, both tibias, both fibulas.
Wow, the whole leg setup, basically.
Pretty much. Plus ankle bones, astragalus, calcaneus, and an almost complete articulated left foot, which is fantastic.
Articulated, so the bones are still joined together.
Yeah, found in life position relative to each other, and even some blocks of ossified tendons that turn bony.
That's incredible detail, all from that Salitral Moreno site.
From there, yeah. From the lower part of the Allen Formation, dated to that Campanian Maastrichtian time frame.
Okay, so a good amount to work with. Now, the crucial bit. What makes Bonapartesaurus Bonapartesaurus? What are those unique defining features?
It's always a combination of things, right? Not just one feature, usually. For Bonapartesaurus, one thing is the height of those neural spines on the vertebrae back, hip, and tail compared to the main body, the centrum. That ratio is over 3.5.
So, quite tall spines overall.
Yes, but especially on the anterior caudal vertebrae, the ones at the front of the tail, those spines are exceptionally long, like 3.5 to 4 times the height of the centrum.
Whoa, really tall projections on the base of the tail.
Exactly. And they have this even distal expansion, meaning they don't taper dramatically towards the top. They stay relatively broad. Picture these tall, kind of blade-like structures.
That must have given its tail a very distinctive look. What else? Any hip bone peculiarities?
A few things, yeah. The front part of the ilium, the preacetabular process, it's slightly bent downwards. The angle is greater than 150 degrees.
Okay, subtle curve.
And there's a specific proportion, the depth of that process compared to another distance on the ilium is less than 0.50. Also, the main blade of the ilium is relatively tall for its length, a ratio of 0.8 or more.
So a tall, slightly bent hip structure.
Plus, the bony shelf over the hip socket, the supraacetabular process, it looks asymmetrical from the side. And the back part of the ilium, the postoacetabular process, gets noticeably thicker towards the rear because of a slight twist in the bone.
Lots of specific details in the hip area. Anything in the legs or feet?
Down in the leg, the canemial crest on the tibia, that ridge on the front of the shin bone where muscles attach, it's expanded, but only near the top of the bone.
Right.
And finally, the ankle. The surface on the astragalus bone that connects with the tibia is moderately expanded inwards, and it only touches part of the tibial surface it connects with.
Okay, so it's this whole specific suite of features. The super tall tail spines, the hip-shaped details, the leg and ankle characteristics. That's the fingerprint for Bonapartesaurus.
That's the idea. It's that unique combination that sets it apart. These technical details are what paleontologists use to distinguish different species and genera.
Incredible how much they can tell from just the bones. Now, speaking of the bones, did they find anything else, like signs of how this specific animal lived or suffered? I think I saw something about paleopathologies.
Yes, that's a fascinating part of the story. A 2021 study used CT scans, computed tomography, to look inside the bones of the holotype specimen.
Like a medical scan, but for a dinosaur fossil.
Exactly. And they found evidence of 3 different paleopathology signs of injury or disease.
3? Wow. What were they?
Well, 2 involved the tail vertebrae, specifically fractures on those tall spinous processes we were just talking about.
Broken bones on its tail.
Yes. On one of them, the break looked like it was caused by some kind of impact, some trauma. And worse, there were signs of a post-traumatic infection.
Oof. So it got infected after the break. That must have hurt.
Almost certainly. It would have caused pain, inflammation, probably limited tail movement. The cause of the fracture on the other tail vertebra wasn't as clear, could have been impact or something else.
Still 2 broken tail processes.
Yeah.
What was the third issue?
The third pathology was found in the foot, specifically the left metatarsal, the second one of the long bones leading to the toes.
And what was wrong with it?
The CT scans revealed a tumor. Based on how it looked, the researchers suggested it was likely a malignant bone tumor, maybe something like an osteosarcoma.
Bone cancer. In a dinosaur.
It seems so. It's something we see in the fossil record sometimes. So this individual had broken tailbones, potentially one infected, and a likely cancerous tumor in its foot.
That's rough. Did these things kill it?
The researchers concluded that while these conditions would have definitely caused pain and affected how the animal functioned walking, moving its tail, they probably weren't the direct cause of death. But it certainly paints a picture of a life with significant challenges.
Absolutely. It really grounds these animals, doesn't it? They weren't just monsters, they were living creatures dealing with injury and disease, just like animals today.
Precisely. It's a somber but important reminder.
Okay, so shifting back to its place in the bigger picture, phylogenetics. Where does Bonapartesaurus sit on the Hadrosaur family tree?
Right, so the original 2017 paper, when it was named, placed it within the Saurolophini. That's a tribe within the Saurolophine subfamily.
The generally non-hollow crested group.
Correct. Their analysis, using a slightly older classification framework, put it as more advanced or derived than Prosaurolophus, but more basal, kind of an earlier offshoot than the different species of Saurolophus itself.
So nested within that Saurolophine group. And that was different from where Willenacake was tentatively placed before it was invalidated, right? Wasn't that linked to Cretaceous-era?
Exactly. Willenacake had been tentatively suggested as maybe belonging to the Cretaceous-era tribe, but that placement didn't hold up, and Bonapartesaurus was firmly placed within the Saurolophini initially.
Okay, but dinosaur family trees are always being updated, aren't they? Has that placement changed recently?
It has, actually, very recently. In 2023, the description of another really interesting South American hadrosauroid called Gonkokin involved a new phylogenetic analysis.
And what did that analysis show for Bonapartesaurus?
It positioned Bonapartesaurus within a newly proposed group called Ostrocretosauria.
Ostrocretosauria. Okay, what's that?
It's defined as a clade, so a common ancestor, and all its descendants that seems to consist entirely of South American Saurolophines. And interestingly, this group appears to be closely related to the Cretaceous-era.
Whoa, okay. So Bonapartesaurus is part of a distinct South American branch of these Saurolophine hadrosaurs.
That's the current thinking based on this 2023 analysis. It suggests South America had its own unique evolutionary radiation of these particular hadrosaurs, separate from what was happening in North America or Asia, for example.
That's really cool. It highlights that continental isolation driving unique evolutionary paths,
Yeah.
like marsupials in Australia.
Exactly that kind of pattern. So the recognition of Ostrocretosauria with Bonapartesaurus as a key member really deepens our understanding of hadrosaur diversity and how they spread across the globe, especially in the southern continents.
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. We've gone from the initial discovery through the naming confusion with Willenacake to the establishment of Bonapartesaurus.
Honoring Jose Bonaparte.
Right. And understanding its unique features, those tall tail spines, the specific hip and leg details, and even getting a glimpse into the hard life of the individual animal with those paleopathologies.
It really shows how science works, doesn't it? Constant revision, new data, new analyses, refining our picture of the past. The journey of Bonapartesaurus from maybe a Lambeosaurine to a key member of this South American Ostrocretosauria clade is a perfect example.
It absolutely is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it really makes you think, doesn't it? What other discoveries are still locked away in the rocks of Argentina or elsewhere in the Southern Hemisphere?
Yeah. How many more pieces of the dinosaur puzzle are out there? Pieces that could completely change our understanding of their evolution, their connections across ancient continents.
It's a reminder that the story of the past is always being rewritten, always evolving as we find more clues. Makes you wonder what the next big find will tell us.